Let's chat more about this phenomenon with CEO of the South African Bookmakers Association, Sean Coleman. A very good afternoon to you, Sean. Thanks very much for your time. Certainly, as far as the South Africa Responsible Gambling Foundation is concerned, we have a problem.
Thanks, Boya. Good to be back with you and with the Newzroom Afrika viewers. In a sense, through the lens of the Responsible Gambling Foundation, there does appear to be some difficulty, particularly in the stats that Sibongile spoke to. In that regard, from an industry perspective, we are very responsible in terms of monitoring and managing the customer as they are onboarded onto various online betting portals. And there are a number of self-exclusion options that are available, including some counseling options. And there's obviously the self-exclusion regulated opportunity for people to self-exclude themselves from that. And we work as best we can within the parameters of the tools that are available to us. I'm sure you will agree that it's very difficult to detect an immediate source of funds when an online customer onboards and begins to bet and entertain themselves.
Well, I mean, there is the allegation that it is not particularly, online gambling is not particularly well regulated, which then raises quite a number of problems.
Yeah, I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding to the environment in which our members and gambling licensees operate in this country. There's a very well-established regulated industry. We have a national gambling board and we have 9 provincial gambling boards. That's a provincial gambling board that regulates gambling in each and every province. Insofar as betting is concerned, it's interesting to note that bookmakers have been regulated, since 1955 and 1957, certainly in KwaZulu-Natal, and in some of the other provinces a little bit later than that. And that stems from the fact that betting on horse racing was the only form of legalized betting in South Africa prior to 1994 with the advent of the casinos. And that then produced legislation and regulation in terms of the casinos. And so it's a very well-regulated market. The difficulty, as I mentioned the last time we had a conversation, was with the illegal market and the ability to differentiate between who you're betting with in terms of a legally licensed bookmaker in South Africa and an illegal grey market operator who is licensed in the foreign jurisdiction like Curacao or Malta. And those are not regulated in this country. And so therein lies an opportunity as well for people to gamble on those sites, and they don't have self-exclusion opportunities available to them because they're gambling on an illegally licensed website. And so that differentiation is sometimes difficult to understand, but it's an important distinction that needs to be drawn between the two.
Do we know what is responsible for casinos dropping so much by 84% in 2009-10 to just 10%? Do you know what's responsible for that?
So COVID-19, the pandemic, during that period with lockdown, the land-based opportunities were not available. And so there was a massive rush to the online space for entertainment purposes. And betting was part of that because bookmakers have the interface medium of online websites to be able to offer betting to customers. And so that obvious rush to online created that opportunity and accelerated online betting, together with additional mobile penetration in the market and more people affording smartphones and the ability to access their entertainment online. And then a lot has been made of the increase in the statistics from the 2023-2024 fiscal year. And that saw the betting licensees being able to offer new games and new betting opportunities in terms of contingencies that wasn't available previously in the country. And it gave customers the opportunity to bet locally with South African licensed operators, where they would ordinarily have found those betting opportunities on the illegal online sites. And we refer to that as channelization. And so the industry has been able to channel money that was going offshore, rechanneling that back onshore, and being for the benefit of the economy, for the licensed operators, and for government in the form of taxation. When you look at the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the gambling industry in South Africa generated just short of 5 billion rand in taxes. That 5 billion rand in taxation is paid directly into the provinces, into local government, and helps them in terms of managing their budgets.
Well, no doubt. I mean, lots of people making loads of cash, but what people like South Africa Responsible Gambling Foundation are raising are the socio-economic consequences. In other words, people who are receiving grants, spending all, their money on gambling. And while it may be good for companies, big companies, or the casinos and everyone else to make a lot of money contributing to the fiscus, on the other hand, it's also taking away from the poor.
Yeah, I mean, it's an understandable conclusion to draw. The other point that I wanted to make, though, is from a retail perspective, the casinos, the land-based casinos, have acquired online licenses. And so you've seen some recent reporting with particular operators improving their financial performance because they've moved into the online space. So land-based has had an outlet to go online. And in relation to gambling licensees, there's a public-private sector partnership, which I also touched on the last time, where all of the industry contributes to the Responsible Gambling Foundation and the funding thereof. And that contribution is generally based on a 0.1% of gross gaming revenue that's generated out of betting transactions. And that is provided to the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation for their funding, which goes towards the treatment of people. Gambling licensees also, in relation to the non-provincial gambling boards, often have license conditions which they have to comply with. And those license conditions also extend outside of the 0.1% of responsible gambling funding. Talks to other corporate social investment initiatives that they need to contribute towards, together with socio-economic development in the provinces in which they're licensed. So there is a fair return on corporate social investment and socio-economic development in the provinces, together with the 0.1% responsible gambling funding that licensees do provide in this particular space.
Where would you say there's still room for improvement?
I think there's always room for improvement. And of course, as an industry, we do subscribe to being responsible, and we do subscribe to, contributions to good causes and contributing to the upliftment of our citizens. And so we often engage with the gambling boards, and we're currently engaging on trying to eradicate the illegal market and the harm that that's bringing, not only to the economy, but to players who wish to entertain themselves and don't have the necessary self-exclusion tools. So we're very much open to dialogue on that.
Sean Coleman, let me thank you very much for your time, CEO of the South African Bookmakers Association there.